Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Joining us, as always, the Prince of Twitter, the Regent of RedState.com, Andrew Malcolm at AHMalcolm on the Twitters. Andrew, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Ed. It's not a week if we're not on.
It is not a week if we're not on. Yeah, it's very true. We won't be a week next week because we won't be on next week. But you know,
the world will be giving Thanksgiving that we're not on.
You may be right. You may very well be correct, sir. That may very well be the case. But at any rate, we won't be on next week. We are on this week, even though I'm actually gone out of the office for most of this week because I'll be traveling back to California for my uncle's funeral. Former Assemblyman Jim Morrissey passed away at 93, a little over a week ago now. But we're going to be doing the funeral this week, and looking forward to talking with my cousins, with my extended family, and trading some really great stories because he was a really great guy. He had a lot of fun stories.
That's nice. Yeah. Share the happy times at the sad times.
Right. And you know, my dad's still around. This was my dad's older brother. My dad's still around, and get a chance to spend a couple days with him too. So that's always good.
Good.
Yeah. So I won't be here this week, but the podcast goes on. I'll be back next week, but the podcast won't go on until after Thanksgiving. Just so we've got the schedule down. Andrew, we have a few things going on right now, and I want to talk to you about a couple of things and get to your column about the 2024 race entering a new stage, because I think it's part of what I want to talk to you about. Before that, though, I want to talk about a little bit more about the media coverage of the war in Gaza, because as we're talking today, the Washington Post is still using Gazan health officials.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean,
the Gaza Ministry of Health.
The New York Times is doing it too, but at least the New York Times inserts at least once in the article as run by Hamas. But I don't think the Washington Post is even including that much of a context.
No, it's just appalling. But you see, if you cater to media, and they do, by providing statistics that can't be verified until the whole world hears that 500 people died when they didn't. And of course the corrections will never catch up with everyone who heard it. It's sad, and I don't understand what happened to all the ethics and the self-discipline. The only thing I can think of is that there's younger people who were pushed along, promoted quickly because of diversity inclinations, and they did not go through. And I did, and it was onerous. They did not go through the onerous early years of being a plebe on a major media institution and handling the crap that they have to handle. But in doing so, you absorb the values and the discipline and the strictures of the institution. And obviously, today's crop didn't.
Or they are. It's just that the values have changed, right? I mean,
yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad.
It's very sad.
Wait a minute. The good news is that Google had a report. I think it was Google had a report out, or no, it was somebody else. But anyway, that millennials are not having children. So I said, "Oh, that's great. So we skip a generation."
Yeah, except for that whole, end of humanity thing. It's great news. The millennials aren't having kids. I saw something today, and I think I saw it on Twitchy, right? It was this woman who was lamenting in her car about, so life is just like, you get born and you have to work until you die. If you want a house, you have to work. If you want to eat, you have to work, because food should really just be yours. But they make you work, and it's like, well, clearly your parents never made you work. And
That's right.
the
Yeah.
most amazing part of this, this is just one person. I'm not saying that the entire generation is just one person, but it was promoted by this social justice warriors, self-described social justice warrior, some PhD, saying this woman really gets this young woman really gets it. It's like, no, she doesn't. She has it handed to her. um, but I noticed at the same time that she's got body piercing and tats all over the place. And it's like, well, did you work for those body piercings and tats? Because that's I mean, or did you think that you were just entitled to those?
Yeah. First thing, cut back on the spending on body piercings and tats. There was another Twitter meme of a woman with all kinds of piercings on her face, and it said, I don't know who told you this, but the truth is, nobody thinks this is attractive.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody to their own, but if you see it at Walmart, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on presentation. There's and it certainly depends on the artistry of the tattoo artist too, because I've seen some very, it's not my thing, but I've seen some very beautiful art in tattoos.
But it's forever, and it hurts.
I was going to say, fresh tattoos, right? Tattoos that haven't gone through the skin creping process, because after a while, and it happens, it ain't gonna look so good. It looks fine while you've got that nice, tight, firm, young skin.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not my thing anyway, because I don't like needles. So I never would have gotten myself, I would have never willingly gotten myself a tattoo anyway. But, and I get that some people like that, but I mean, at a certain point when when you've got it all over your body, it's creeping up your neck and onto your face. It's like, have you really thought this all the way through? Because
the dragon's flames will not be so bright in the future.
Well, not only that, but then, you got to go to job interviews with this stuff. I mean, it's great if you're a celebrity and you're independently wealthy. I mean, I fully grant that people are going to be watching this and going, "Oh yeah, that's just what we need." Two old guys talking about what's attractive.
Well,
It's like, all I can tell you is that I've been around for a while. Andrew's been around for a while longer.
That's right.
And we've seen a few things and stuff that you think momentarily, oh hey, that's cool. Turns out to be, not so much. And you probably
it doesn't grow on you.
It doesn't grow on you. No, it doesn't grow on you.
Well, that's all right if people want to do it, but then they can't complain about not having any money.
Not having any money, or complain that people are. I had this conversation with
judging them.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I had this conversation with the son of a friend of mine, one of my best friends at the time. And I think it was because we were doing something with church, right? And he said, I don't understand why people judge me about what I wear. Because at the time it was that really sort of super loose skateboardy stuff that the kids were wearing, 20 something years ago, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand why people judge me by what I wear. They shouldn't judge me by what I wear. I said, well, why do you wear that? Well, I like it. Okay, I like it. That's fine. Any other reason? Well, yeah, because it expresses who I am. So you're saying that this is an expression. You're wearing this as absolutely. I said, well, then why are you surprised when people judge your expression? I mean, it's like any other expression.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, but that's not what you should judge me on who I am. I said, yeah, but you're telling me that this is an expression of who you are, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
So they are kind of judging you on who you are, because this is an expression. You're telling me this is an expression of who you are. It's not like you're just putting on some jeans and a t-shirt and going out, or, I said, it's the same thing if I wore a t-shirt that had some obscene message on it. I really shouldn't be surprised if people judge me on the basis of that I'm wearing something that has an obscene message on it. And so probably I'm the kind of guy who thinks the obscene thought in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or thinks it's funny. Yeah.
Or thinks it's funny, or or wants to promote that expression.
No, I've never personally, Ed, I've never laughed at anything that's obscene or
Yeah,
very dirty jokes or anything. I don't even want to hear them.
We won't tell them on this podcast, but believe me, we both have
Yeah.
heard them and we both enjoy them.
Yeah. Well, anybody who's been on a
it's
sports team hears it. Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, obviously.
Well, let's see. You
Guys
had
you had a good game yesterday, though.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Another one
Yeah,
after downing San Francisco. Or
the Steelers had another good game yesterday too.
did they?
Yeah.
Who's the quarterback now?
It's still Kenny Pickett.
It's still Kenny.
Yeah, it's still Kenny Pickett. And well, he got hurt and he got taken out of a game, but he went back in the next game. That was last week, I think. And so
well, that's great.
They've got the same record. They've got the same record, but I got to tell you, I don't know how the Steelers got to 6-3 this season. They're barely at 6-3, whereas I think the Cleveland Browns are a little bit more solidly at 6-3.
I read somewhere before the weekend that if the playoffs were now, the entire division would be in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, Baltimore's at 7-2, I think, or maybe they're at 7-3.
We took care of Baltimore.
Right.
Next up is you.
Oh, is it? Is that next week? Okay. Yeah. Well, and we're not having a podcast. Andrew doesn't want to do a podcast next week. Right. I wonder why. Actually,
Anyway.
I'm gritting my teeth because, the Steelers are finding ways to win, but they're having to find ways to win.
Right.
Not necessarily against the greatest teams either. I mean, they beat the Packers, and the Packers, I think, only have 2 or 3 wins this year, and they only barely beat the Packers. They had to pick them off at the end of the game in order to win the game. So, at any rate,
back to the Hamas media.
Yeah, expressions of who you are, and this is, I think, an expression of who the Washington Post is. They would much rather take dictation from a terrorist group without checking facts. And we've had this conversation ever since the hospital, the so-called hospital bombing in
the hospital parking lot bombing.
Yeah, hospital parking lot rocket failure is what it turned out to be. While demanding that Israel provide, solid evidence in triplicate for every single assertion they ever make. And it's, I'm not necessarily sure that that's an expression of journalistic integrity, because it sounds a lot more like an expression of terrorist mouthpiecing to me.
Yeah. And they're in financial trouble. And the market has a way of correcting itself, and we need strong journalism institutions, financially strong as well as morally and ethically strong. So I hope they find a way to correct themselves and that the public recognizes that. But they've lost, I think the first 6 months of this year, they lost 500,000 online subscribers. So and they only had 3 million, I think, to begin with. Now, the New York Times has 10 million because they figured out, well, they have more resources, but they figured out the variety of things to market that will attract subscribers. Life magazine, it's funny how things turn around. Life magazine and Look magazine and Collier's, they were general interest magazines, and they were generally interesting. I subscribed to Collier's as a teenager because I liked it, and I got one issue and it went out of business because they were general interest, and the movement then was and has been to a niche marketing. The people didn't want to buy Collier's for the occasional article on shortwave radios. They wanted a shortwave radio magazine, and it got very specific. And that was Time's problem, and even Esquire. So the New York Times has figured it out. They were late, but they figured it out. Wall Street Journal figured it out, but the Washington Post is having trouble.
Well, Washington Post is having trouble in many different ways. And
Yes.
the other thing I wanted to bring up was how they treated our friend Michael Ramirez this past week. Did you catch that?
No.
So Michael Ramirez had a editorial cartoon, which I can't reproduce because it's licensed content and we don't have a license for it. I think we may have reproduced part of it in one of our posts, and I have to talk to the person who did that. I don't think Michael's going to complain, and I don't think his syndicator is going to complain, but we have to be careful about that kind of stuff. But the image was an editorial cartoon that he did for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, right? Which is Michael's base. That's his employer. But he syndicated off of that. And the Las Vegas Review-Journal has an agreement with the Washington Post to use Ramirez's material twice a month. It's some sort of special licensing arrangement that has been made between the LVRJ, the WaPo, and Michael. And Michael apparently presents them with several of his cartoons, and the editorial page editor selects which images he wants to use from Michael. Well, the image that he selected this time was an image of Hamas spokesman / senior leader Ghazi Hamad saying, we don't use human shields while you got all these different hostage baby woman strapped to him along with a bomb and stuff like that, right? It's a great editorial cartoon. If you haven't seen it, again, we don't have a license for it, so go to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. You can see it there. So they run it.
Well,
right?
Issues and Insights has them too.
That's right. Issues and Insights has them. Then they do license this content. So go to issuesandinsights.com because they're good friends and they can use the traffic more than the Las Vegas Review-Journal can. So do that. This is clearly, if you're paying attention to the news, right? Which is, I think, the first problem with the Washington Post. If you're paying attention to the news, you knew exactly what Michael Ramirez was lampooning. It was the interview that NBC's Matt Bradley did with Ghazi Hamad. And by the way, NBC's Matt Bradley did a really good job on this interview. I even wrote it up just about how good it was, where he is hammering Hamad on this issue of hostages and hostaging and human shields. Oh, we don't use civilians for human shields. He's clearly lampooning that, and the figure in the article is clearly Hamad. Now it's labeled Hamas, but Hamad works for Hamas. He's a senior leader of Hamas. And Dan Shipley, who's the Washington Post's editorial page editor, publishes it and then starts getting complaints from readers, and I think much more so inside the newsroom, claiming that this is a racist cartoon. Now, I don't even see how that becomes an issue. It's clearly Hamad that Ramirez is lampooning here. It's a specific person. It looks exactly like this guy. If anything, it makes him look a little better than he looks in person. And
he's a good artist, Ramirez.
He's brilliant. He's two-time Pulitzer Prize winner, I should say. Pulitzer, not Pulitzer.
He and I used to have offices next to each other at the LA Times, and he would call me in some days to say, well, which one do you like better? He's really good.
He's such a nice guy.
He is. And he's a musician. He has his own little band. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've met him several times. He's just a very classy guy, very soft-spoken. If you met him, you'd love him. This guy is very careful, right? He's careful. And to accuse him of racism is just ludicrous.
Well, everything you don't like is racist.
Well, right. Everyone I don't like is Hitler.
You're racist on some days.
only on days ending in a Y. I don't know what to tell you. So
Uh,
the Washington Post pulls the thing. Said,
oh
well,
no.
yeah, they pull it, saying, well, after listening to the feedback, and it's problematic and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, talk about Craven. Talk about a cave.
Yeah.
No integrity whatsoever on this
Well,
point.
it used to be you wanted attention, you wanted controversy, and then you would cover both sides. But these guys are so woke. They're oh, geez, we don't want to annoy anybody on our side.
It's not just that they're woke, Andrew. It's that they're cowardly.
Well, okay, I was trying to be polite, but you're right.
Well, I am not going to be. I am not going to be polite about this. Now, Michael's
See,
trying
that's why you're racist. That makes you a racist. You're not polite.
Michael's trying to be gracious about this, saying, "Hey, look, Shipley's done some really good stuff at the Washington Post, which he has. He's introduced some conservative voices there. That's a minor miracle in and of itself. But if you're not going to stand behind them, then what's the point? This is very much akin to what the New York Times did with Tom Cotton's editorial,
That's
right?
That's
And in that case, the editorial page editor tried to stand up for that, and they ended up canning him over it. He tried to
but they caved to the newsroom.
Right.
They said that the newsroom crowd said, "Oh, it makes our lives endangered," and he fought back, and the publisher caved, and he's gone. And then Barry Weiss left. So,
yep.
Yeah. Courage is not the thing, but they will keep awarding each other awards and bragging about it.
Yeah. It's I don't know what you call it. The high fives as you circle the drain, I guess, is what you call that. I mean, the Washington Post credibility really circled the drain this week in more ways than one. The Ramirez thing to me is, I bring it up because you're a friend of Michael's, and I would like to think that I
don't know how I missed that. Yeah.
I haven't talked to Michael in a while, and it's just an issue until we get a license to do some stuff. We just can't carry his work, but the lawyers get really nervous when you try to do stuff like that, and you get memos from the front office, Andrew. That's all I'm going to say. You get memos from the front office.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I've heard them. I was called in once.
Yeah. Well, if it was just one time, if it was just once, then you're ahead of me. So I've been called in more than once. I won't be specific, but I'll just say more than once.
Well, what can I say? You're racist. I mean,
yeah. All right. On that note, let's go over to race, which is your post on the 2024 race.
Race, a different kind of race.
Different kind of race, but so you are an expert on the 2024 race, which kind of makes you a racist.
That's true. That's right. And an ageist, because I'm old.
Yeah, well, same here, right? Yeah. So yeah.
No.
Get off my dad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I've been intrigued the last couple of weeks. I don't know what I'll write about this week, but I've been intrigued the last couple of weeks about the race and the wrinkles within it. I've never seen a race with so many wrinkles in it, and twists and turns and possibilities and threats. Trump is way ahead on the Republican side, but how will they react if he gets convicted? He says he's going to stay in, but I think there's some people that might flake away. And Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are staying in the race as the prime backups. Today, which is yesterday when people hear this, Tim Scott quit the race, and he withdrew. Now, a little twist. Some people on Twitter were asking, why do they say they're suspending their campaign? Because it really is the end. But illegally, if they suspend it, they can still continue to raise funds and accept donations to pay off their debts. If they end it, they end it. They can't get money anymore. So they're, remember Hillary Clinton had so many debts that took her years.
It's not that unusual either. I mean, sometimes
I know.
it's not the
I
only
don't know
person.
how you spend money that you don't have, but the country does it. So I guess campaigns can too.
Yeah, except that the campaigns end up having to pay it back at some point in time. You can't default on those things. You have to find ways to pay it off.
Yeah, that's right.
And usually what happens in especially at the presidential level is that if you bail out while endorsing somebody, you get some sort of agreement to assist.
Yeah, you get a goodie. Yeah.
To assist in paying off the debt, or at least to assisting in fundraising for it and stuff like that. Yeah,
That's
there
right.
was some griping on Twitter though about Tim Scott dropping out, because apparently about 25 minutes before the announcement was made that he was dropping out yesterday, they sent a fundraising letter. I'm sure it was automated. Nobody did it, on purpose, but still.
Well, they kept it quiet. I mean, didn't he do it on the radio? He did it on the Trey Gowdy show, and
Yes.
Trey Gowdy was quite surprised. And you remember, I mean, it's a clever thing to do. Remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger announced his candidacy for California governor on the Jay Leno show. So why not? You've got a lot more people there than you'd have at a photo op.
Yep. I like Tim Scott. I think I think he's good in the Senate. I just don't think he ever got comfortable with the debate format.
No, and he didn't have I mean, his message wasn't angry enough, I'm sad to say. You need to be angry in today's political market and in today's blogging market. I mean, anger sells. People are looking for it, and he wasn't angry. He has a wonderful story, and I don't know if he'd be interested in being a Republican cabinet member, but he might be a Republican vice presidential candidate. He wouldn't have to resign the Senate seat. So,
I am thinking the same thing. I'm thinking he makes a very good running mate for whoever does win the nomination. Just depending on who it is.
Being vice president,
a warm bucket of spit.
Yeah, and it doesn't help you. I mean, ask Al Gore and Mike Pence about the future. Although George H.W. Bush, but his was kind of a third Reagan term, I think.
And it's historically anomalous too. I went back and looked, and unless the vice president succeeded to the presidency because of death, or in one case resignation, running mates almost never become presidents. And so his was a bit of an anomaly. Yeah. And then
Truman did it, but that was death.
And Richard Nixon did it, but it was
separate. He lost when he tried. Yeah.
Lost the first time he tried. He came back and did it again. Joe Biden didn't run immediately afterwards because Hillary Clinton got the nomination. He wasn't even in the race. And then he ran after that. So Biden is actually also an anomaly in that sense, but it wasn't consecutive. And frankly, Joe Biden.
See, those are the wrinkles I was talking about. There's so many of those, so twists. And when you look at the polls, I mean, last week, the New York Times Siena College poll was a lot of attention focused on that because Biden did so poorly.
Right.
And Trump was ahead by 10. But when you get down into the numbers, which you're much better at than I am, you see that was the 6 swing state poll. And when you get down into the numbers, you see that DeSantis narrowly beat Biden in a hypothetical race in 4 of the 6 states. But Nikki Haley thumped Biden in all 6 of the swing states, including Wisconsin. So, Pennsylvania, she was ahead by 10, 12 points in some of the places. So that's my point about being maybe not head to head with Trump, but if something happens to Trump's candidacy, she's in a pretty good position. She's positioned herself as a strong conservative with 2 terms as governor. She's got foreign policy chops, which DeSantis doesn't. She doesn't have military chops. Her husband does, but
but I think that she's been a U.S. ambassador to the UN.
That's right. That's right. And she's a child born here, but a child of immigrants. So there's a conservative 2 terms in South Carolina. So there's been this is the wrinkles there that I was quite surprised. I've spent some time with Nikki Haley and I was impressed, but I was quite surprised that she beat Trump and DeSantis in that 6-state poll. And you can call it an outlier if you don't like it, but these things are coming together, so many of them, and we're only 2 months out from the campaign. She just spent $10 million lining up advertising for the end of the year period, which is just before Iowa. So we'll see. That's why you follow politics, is it's important, but it's also entertaining. It's a bitch too, because I was in it. I tell you what, you get up at 5 because I was in communications on the first George Bush campaign. You get up at 5 a.m. because you got to get them on a TV show, and then you got to get Mrs. Bush on a radio show, and then you work all day on appearances and setting up interviews, and you work into the evening, and then when things are done, you have the big thing right after lunch, so the TV can edit it and get it on the evening news, and then after dinner, you probably got a fundraiser or something, and then you're flying late into the night to the next place. That was in the Republican primary in '99 and 2000. So you get there, and then you've got to plan the next day and set up interviews. I'm not complaining because it was fascinating, and I learned so much, but it's tough, and it's supposed to be tough. These guys and women are supposed to be put through the ringer and see how they handle pressure.
Indeed. Well, I think at that we're going to wrap things up here, but not before we get a chance to talk about the jokes of the day.
You go first.
All right, I'll give you one first here. I'll give you one first. And this is from jokesoftheday.net. I love this site. It's great. It's got a lot of great jokes. A clergyman's walking down a country lane and sees a young farmer struggling to load hay back into a cart after it had fallen off. "You look hot, my son," the cleric says. "Why don't you rest a moment and I'll give you a hand?" The young man says, No, you don't need to do that. And he says, No, don't be silly. He says, No, my father wouldn't like it. And the clergyman says, No, everybody's entitled to a break. Come and have a drink of water. So the young man keeps protesting about his father being upset, and finally the clergyman loses his patience and says, "Your father must be a real slave driver. Tell me where I can find him, and I'll give him a piece of my mind." And the young man says, "He's under the hay."
I like that, Ed. That's a good one. So, okay, I got a couple. These are old. Conan O'Brien, he said the Marvel Comics has introduced its first superhero who's a female Muslim. She can fly, which comes in handy because she's not allowed to drive. And let's see. Jimmy Fallon, he said new cable news ratings, CNN drops to last place. It's so bad that CNN asked Larry King to start wearing more revealing suspenders. Okay, I think that's what I got this week.
All right, I got one more for you here, Andrew. I'm going to leave you laughing here. So Recently, a garbage collector, a teacher, and a lawyer wound up together at the pearly gates. And St. Peter said, well, if you want to get into heaven, you have to each answer one question. So St. Peter turns to the garbage collector and says, what was the name of the ship that crashed into the iceberg? Just made a movie about it. And the garbage collector, scratches his chin for a moment and says, you mean the Titanic? And St. Peter says, yes. Welcome to heaven. So then he turns to the teacher and says, all right, how many people, ballpark figure, round number, how many people died when the Titanic sank? And the teacher's thinking, okay, I think it was about 1,500. And he says, yes, close enough. Welcome to heaven. The lawyer's thinking, okay, this is great. I've seen the movie. So he walks up and St. Peter says, yes, great. Good to see you. Name them.
Oh, you got some good ones this week, Ed.
Good, right? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I got one more that I missed. Jimmy Fallon, this is from years ago. He says, Joe Biden says he's not made up his mind about running for president, which raises the question, who was asking?
That's a pretty good question, actually.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. And unfortunately, he answered it 4 years later.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. All right, well, Andrew Malcolm, the Prince of Twitter, the Regent of RedState.com. You can find him on Twitter at @AHMalcolm. We don't call it X here. We call it Twitter at @AHMalcolm. Right. Right. Or go to RedState.com. He's in the VIP column and sign up for a VIP membership if you aren't already signed up for it.
Yeah, it's really cheap now.
It is. Lots of great discounts. Lots of great stuff. Red State and Hot Air. If you do VIP Gold, you get access to everything on all of our sites. But Red State's got some really good original reporting this week. They do it often. So be sure to go check that out. Andrew Malcolm, thanks again for another great week. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Well, thank you, Ed. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And I'll say right here in front of everybody that one of my biggest Thanksgiving things is Edward and the opportunity to work with him for so many years.
Thank you, sir.
What a kind, smart, and generous man. So I appreciate you, and I give thanks for that, and I give thanks to the viewers. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
And I give thanks for Andrew. He is truly a treasure, and I joke around about being the Prince of Twitter, but he is actually a Prince of...
Yeah, right.
Everybody who's been watching this over the years knows that already. So, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving to our viewers. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.